Hi guys, nice to meet you all. Welcome back to one of our many appointments of the Saturday, one of the many Through Eternity walks we are leading we have been leading in the past few weeks. I'm sure you're not used to see this part of Rome. We are in the Ostiense district, and what you're looking at is industrial archaeology. This building right in front of you used to be the first power plant of Rome, actually, built in 1912. And today it's a museum, the Centrale Monte Martini. Let me show you much better the entrance. I want you to remember this name. And this is a museum of early 1900s factory machinery and statues belonging to the Capitoline Museum collection. Can you believe that, guys? So this is a very, very particular museum that we certainly can explore in one of our many walks, Through Eternity walks. So let me show you my face in the first place. Nice to meet you all. My name is Caterina. Hi Thomas, ciao Pips. As you see, I'm wearing a mask as it is law since a few weeks, even in the open space, but I have no one around me right now, so I can keep it down for a moment. Otherwise you won't be able to hear me probably. And today we are going to explore a very, very particular neighborhood of Rome, of which the Centrale Monte Martini is one of the symbols, actually. The Ostiense district, as we were saying. We're certainly not in one of the areas of Rome that you have been exploring when you came to Rome in your trips, when it was still possible to travel. Certainly when you have 2 or 3 days or so, you're not really going to come to the Ostiense district. You're going to go to the Colosseum, you're going to go to the Vatican Museum. You're gonna go to many other other places other than this one, actually. Let me show you one as we continue to walk. I want to have one last walk, last look at this magnificent museum. I want you to remember it, because maybe next time you come, this could be a good occasion to visit. This is one of the least explored museum of the city, and it's magnificent, it's gorgeous. So, Ostiense district is an industrial area of Rome. Rather, it's a post-industrial area. It used to be an industrial area in early 1900s, actually. But let me put the mask on because I'm approaching people. The buildings that you see in this particular area of the city date back, as we were saying, to the early 1900s, basically. So we are along the Via Ostiense, actually, which even in ancient times used to be one of the consular streets of Rome. Let me show you a look of it around. Let me give you a look of it around so you see. Not one of these sides of Rome that you're used to see, actually. But I want to take you to a very interesting bridge, because this district has lots of hidden gems, also in terms of architecture, actually. And just in a moment, sorry guys. Okay. Sorry, I had a little problem with my mask, but now everything is under control again, or almost, at least. So, as I was saying, this district has a lot of secrets to show, and one of them is just around the corner from here, which is a bridge that was actually built only in 2012, actually. Let me cross the street so that you can going to see that anytime soon. Actually, so you see the Ostiense Road is a pretty large street, and we're in the middle of traffic right now. Let's cross discreetly and hide under a tree. As you can see, it just has been raining just a few minutes ago. You're under a tree seeking shelter with me. Let's continue to cross the street. actually. So we are, just to make you better understand where we are right now, we are in the area where there's the Italy outlet and the famous Cobra Bridge, which is what you're looking at right now. We're gonna get closer to it. We're just crossing the street right now. This bridge was built in 2012 actually, and the Romans call it the Cobra Bridge because, as you see, it sort of looks like a cobra, and actually it's dedicated to one of the few survivors of the only survivor of the Holocaust actually in Rome, which was a woman called Septimia Spizzichini. And so this bridge was built to commemorate her actually, and however the Romans call it the Cobra Bridge actually. And if you cross it, you go to Italy outlet and shop and eat everything good that Roman cuisine has to offer. And just on the other side of the Tiber there is the Garbatella neighborhood actually, and which is also one of the popular districts that certainly we could explore during one of our walks actually. And right next to it, in fact, there is the Garbatella station, which you're going to see in just one moment. And once I'm going to show it to you, you're going to find out the real reason why I took you to this district today, which is street art. Actually, the Ostiense district was the very first neighborhood in Rome that, since the 1990s and since the early 2000s, saw street artists engaging themselves in representing murals or also posters on the walls of these working class kind of buildings. This historically always has been a sort of working class area. And here, this is what I wanted to show you here, this building here. Actually, let's get a little closer to it. You see, we start to see a sort of a mural actually. There you go, you have a closer look to it. This is an artist that we already have seen in the Tormarancia district. Clemens Beer is his name, actually. He has been creating murals of this kind all over the world, in Berlin, in New York, everywhere, actually. And he's an abstract artist, and like many street artists do, he interacts with the neighborhood he is performing, let's put it this way, and he kind of tries to use the same colors of the neighborhood. So his abstractism is about the neighborhood itself. But let's go back actually. Let's have one last look at this magnificent bridge that you can see here, this magnificent jewel of contemporary architecture. And let's go back to where we came from. I'm showing you my face again. Okay, no, not yet. Here we are, guys. Sorry, I'm having a little trouble with this little mask by talking and walking and having to wear the mask, so you will have to excuse me for a second because I have to have it on. Woo, sorry. sorry. Okay, I'm back, guys. Sorry, you know, with these new regulations, we're all having our problems in general. But let's try to forget about it. I know you're having a laugh at me right now, and as you should, actually, as you absolutely should. Okay, I'm back in power. So, as I was saying, let's talk a little bit more about this district. This district develops around the Via Ostiense, along the Via Ostiense, which is, since ancient times, one of the consular roads of Rome. And also in ancient times, this was the street, the road that basically led to Ostia, which was the port of the ancient city. So basically this street still today kind of runs along the Tiber towards the sea, towards Ostia, which is where, as we said, the port is. And even in ancient times, the Ostiense road was a sort of service, or rather support way to the river itself, because also in ancient times all the goods came to Rome from all over the empire, basically through the river, through the Tiber. First to Ostia, as we said, and then along the Tiber to the city itself. In fact, in ancient times, the city was full of both the banks of the Tiber were full of little harbors on both banks of the river, no? But all the goods that came from, so marble, but also oil and good grain, goods of all sorts, were stored in a series of buildings that were in this area, the Ostiense area, even in ancient times. So marble, still today there's a street called Via di Marmorata that can be that archaeologists eventually investigate, and they still today they find tons and tons of marble right underneath of Via Marmorata. And so this always has been the vocation of the city itself. Also, once Christianity took over, this was also the place where one of the most important churches of Rome used to be, the most important church right after St. Peter's Basilica, which was St. Paul's Basilica, along the Ostiense, along the Via Ostiense, outside of the ancient walls, because we are outside of the ancient city right now. So what I'm trying to say, this area was, especially during the Middle Ages, this area was a place that knew important pilgrimage processes, and it was densely populated even at that time. However, for a long, long time, the area was right in the middle of the countryside. We know about travelers that in the 1700s still were in the countryside here, in the fields basically, and still saw ancient ruins everywhere basically. And we know Rome becomes the capital of Italy in 1870. And this is when, since ancient times, Rome starts to experience another big expansion. Because we know in ancient times, in the 1st and 2nd century AD, Rome was the most populated city on the planet. Now, over 1 million people used to live in the city. But then after the fall of the empire, throughout the Middle Ages and then also the Renaissance and so on, Rome had just been a town of a few thousand people. But Rome becomes a capital, a metropolis, again, with the unification of Italy. And one of its early majors, whose name was Ernesto Nathan, actually a Jewish neighbor of the city, in early 1900s, decided to make this again, not again, but since the strong commercial vocation of the neighborhood itself, this became naturally, also because of its geographical position, the modern industrial neighborhood of Rome in early 1900s. Okay? Because basically the very first train. Wait, let me put my mask on again. Okay, I can put it on. The very first train line that Rome ever had connected Termini station to the port of Civitavecchia, and it was this train sort of track was running through the Ostiense district. So again, this area becomes a storage area, a warehouse area, a magazine, sort of, as we said, a strong commercial and industrial area. So the very first power plant of the city was built here, as we said. Now it became a museum, the Centrale Monte Martini. The very first gasometer and the very first electrical station, and so on. So this is what today we call in Rome industrial archaeology, actually. And as I was saying, since we are approaching the area where we can see the murals, this area since the 1990s and since the early 2000s has become a district where you can enjoy, where you can see street art. Actually, street art is a movement that was basically born in the US, but then crossed the entire planet. Street artists are basically gypsies, nomads. Still today they travel all over the world and paint walls everywhere. Guys, I want to show you this view. This is the very first gasometer that the city ever had. Now we're gonna cross the street and gonna go towards that area. So that's what we mean today by industrial archaeology, basically. Gasometer obviously is no longer in use today, since a long time in fact. And in early 1900s it was used for gas, for distributing gas to the city, gas that was employed for domestic use, but also for the street illumination at night, actually. I'm back again. You see, it has been raining and now the sun is back again. It looks kind of a spring afternoon when there's rain and sun, rain and sun, rain and sun all the time, actually. And so this neighborhood itself is interesting also because of this reason, because you can see, you know, in Rome nobody ever tears down anything since ancient times. This is the reason why somehow it's so interesting, no? So you can see early 1900s structures interacted with street art and also put into context with ancient art in the museums present. So let me show you again the gasometer in the sun, as you can see. Also because actually everybody always thinks there's just one gasometer in the city, but actually three of them. They're all in this district, in this area. And here, this is where we start to see the very first murals, actually, of the area. And those are artists that we know already, because we have seen them in the Tormarancia district a few weeks ago. And the very first one is also one of my favorite ones. His name is Diamond, and we're very close to his work, right below the gasometer. There we go. Okay, so you see how he sort of dialogues with Art Nouveau and with pop art at the same time, and with comics and cartoons, no? It almost looks like a comic strip of the 1960s, no? And right next to it, there's another somehow hilarious mural by an artist called Caterina. It's a very long mural, as you can see, and it's lettering. Actually, it's not figurative. Lettering was if I'm not wrong, lettering was the very first kind of street art, actually, born as a protest. And here you see the lettering says, "Paint over the cracks." Well, the story behind this lettering is hilarious, because "paint over the cracks" takes its inspiration from a Roman way of saying, which is "mettici una pezza," which is basically a slang expression in Roman dialect. Pezza means patch. It's mettere una pezza means to find a solution on a problematic situation, which is a temporary solution, like a patch, something which is good for now. Okay, so paint over the cracks takes inspirations from this way of saying, but it also wants to underline the function of street art to requalify decadent buildings, old buildings that otherwise you would tear down. And in fact, very often that happens anyways, even if masterpieces are painted on them, actually. Street art is by its nature temporary. Actually, it was born temporary because by its nature, street art was born as illegal art. Street artists would paint at night or without permission on buildings whose owners had no idea about what was going to happen to their buildings, to the buildings themselves. And sometimes, because of its illegal nature, street art still today is removed from the surfaces or just not taken care of. And because of its illegal nature, very often street artists are their identity is not known. They use nicknames and they sort of live a double life. Nobody in their real life knows that they are street artists. And today they can be, they're very cultured people very often. They study at the Academy of Fine Arts and they graduate in art history. Sometimes they're environmental engineering researchers and they travel all over the world to festivals, street art festivals to which they are invited, and realize these magnificent frescoes or posters on the surfaces of the walls of industrial or working class areas, urban areas. And the context is always very important for street artists. And street art interacts with its context because of its nature, actually. And so the history of the neighborhood itself is always incredibly important for street artists, actually. We are reaching one of the areas where are some of the most important murals on the surface. The one I'm going to show you is just hilarious. So you see this building here on the Via del Commercio. Actually, this is a commercial, actually. This is a mural that also serves a commercial. This was commissioned by a cartoon TV that wanted to advertise its channel. So all these little figures that you see are cartoons. You see here Fred and Barney, and then you see Will, Coyote, and the two hands of Michelangelo's Sistine Chapel are just treated very ironically. No? So that's the creation of Adam in the Sistine Chapel, revisited for a commercial. Let me show you the detail a little closer, you see? So already in Tormarancia we saw Michelangelo revisited. Certainly this is a hilarious revisiting of Michelangelo's work somehow. Michelangelo among cartoons, guys, how about that? Can you ever imagine? So Ostiense district is kind of full of surprises like this. But let me show you another very, very famous work of this district, which is the Wall of Fame by a Roman artist called J.B. Rock. It's 26 portraits of famous people, of myths that had an influence on the life of these artists, like Zorro or Malcolm X, or as you see Pope John Paul. But also you'll see Ray Charles and famous rappers, Obama. I'll show them to you all. But what is funny about this work of art is that they are all sort of in alphabetical order, and among the myths that J.B. Rock had in his life, among these figures there's also his mom and his best friend and people that had an influence, people that had an impact in his life. So his uncle right next to Frida Kahlo, Karl Marx, or figures of comics, actually. And what J.B. Rock wanted sort of to underline was the importance of myths in our society, in our life. And right in front of it, actually, we are on the Via del Commercio, there is another very, very important work of art by two artists called Stan and Lex, that they never represent, they're the opposite thing, they never represent famous people. In fact, what all these human figures are here are common people, normal people, in other words, imaginary inhabitants of the Ostiense district that are looking at J.B. Rock's Wall of Fame. No? So it's almost like these two works of art sort of communicate with each other. And what is interesting here is that this is not a mural, this is not a painted mural. Both works are stencil work, are two important techniques of street art: poster and stencil, actually, because of the temporary nature of the work itself. As we said, because of its illegal nature, it's work that has to be done quickly, actually, because you don't have much time to realize something, no? So you use a poster, so that means a piece of paper that later you're going to stick, basically, to put on the wall with glue, or you use stencils. What is interesting here in the work of Sten and Lex is that they use only stencils. Actually, they had turned into abstract artists. This still belongs to their figurative period. But then they also use the matrices of their stencils, and they put them on the surface, as you can see, for example. Let me show you. And then they let time sort of erase them, actually. So the decadence of the work, as you can see, is part of the work itself, actually. And as I was saying, street art is important. Sorry, I just wanted to here I'm again back again. Street art is important. What I'm trying to say is that the link with its context is important for street art. Street art makes sense when it knows its context, the history of the neighborhood in which it's going to be, or the history of the people that used to live in that particular building, like we saw, for example, in the Turmarancia district, no? And that's the whole purpose of it, actually, to communicate with, in the first place, with the people that live in that particular area. And an important, a funny use of street art is right here, actually. We are walking by a pizzeria place. Actually, let me show it to you. Look at how murals have been used here by the pizza place to advertise the place, the pizzeria place itself. Actually, isn't that hilarious? So as I was saying, this is also a sort of student area, actually. I used to study here in early 2000. I used to study in this. My university, the Roma Tre University, is in this neighborhood, and the colleagues, some of the colleagues that are following this tour today, they have been studying there as well, and they might. I mean, this neighborhood changed incredibly over the decades. Over the centuries is a little too much. Well, it also changed over the centuries as well, of course. But let's see how street art has become part of the scenario itself, not losing the student life character somehow. This area still today is full of students that live and study here, also because this area has pretty cheap. The prices for the rentals are pretty cheap compared to the rest of the city, considering they were pretty close to the city center, actually. So we have seen this area, this neighborhood, changing over the decades, changing a lot. And as I was saying, where there are students, there is nightlife, of course. There are trendy places where to eat and shop, obviously. So Italy outlet, but not only. This area is a place also for foodies, actually. As you can see still today. Thank God there is people getting out of the street, having something nice. Okay, well, we're right in front of Burger King right now. That wasn't on purpose, I swear, actually. But it's a place full of life, as you can see. I mean, compared to the standards that we have today. And right around the corner from here, we're going to see another interesting artwork by... No, okay, sorry, that was a mistake. So here, What we have right in front of us is the community of Sant'Egidio, which gives support and shelter to homeless people. But you see, on the surface, there is a mural made by a South American, actually Peruvian artist, Peruvian-Mexican artist. He's Carlos Atoche and Luis Alvarez. And what you see represented here is the fall of the giants. It's not really possible for me to cross the street, but you can see it pretty well even here, even from here. It's basically the representation of it's the representation of ancient statues at the bottom of the ocean, at the bottom of the sea. So you see masks, South American masks, but also statues of the classical tradition, like the spinario. Let me show you spinario right here, actually. Now this is the representation of the statue that you can see at the Capitoline Museum. So this artist was deeply influenced by Italian tradition and culture, and he revisits it, actually. Carlos Atoche is a South American artist that studied fine art in Rome in the early 2000s. So the fall of the giants, it's the giants, it's the culture that sort of is destroyed by its own flaws, basically, somehow. It's us that fall, and somehow today we understand best than ever the meaning of this particular work of art. Right behind it, I'm going to cross the street. Actually, no, before crossing the street, I'm going to show you another interesting, very interesting work of art, which is by Blue. Blue is the only Italian artist, together with Stan and Lex, that was invited by Banksy at his a particular festival that he organized in 2009, if I'm not wrong, on the West End of London. Actually, so Blue is an Italian artist known all over the world. Actually, The Guardian defined him as the most important, one of the 10 most important street artists of the world, actually. And what you see here it's another sort of industrial archaeology, another building that belongs to industrial archaeology, which is the station. It used to be the station of the Italian Air Force in a few decades ago. And what you see here are lots of faces represented by Blue. In Italian it's called the Mille Volti, 1,000 faces. The faces of the immigrants, basically, that occupy the building. We're talking about abusive housing. Since 2003, actually. So the social aspect as well, politics, is extremely important for street artists as well, actually. They're always very much engaged in street art is absolutely political. Most of the time it's political. Sorry, I'm just approaching people, so putting my mask on to try to not to talk too much. And I'm going back because I want to show you another work by Blue on the very same wall, actually. And it's called The Sailing Boat. It's a very interesting work of art, but I want to try to cross the street to show it to you. I'm showing you the Spinario one more time by Carlos Atoche. We're actually starting to see the Sailing Boat by Blue, but I want to try to see if I can cross the street to show it better to you, actually. Okay, let me see. Well, we don't see it very well from here because that's another one of these problems that street art has. It doesn't last too long, also because of the particular kind of painting of colors that artists use. Very often they're natural colors that have a very low impact on the environment because they're trying to be as little as aggressive as possible with their colors in order not to create any further pollution, actually. And here we better see the work by Blue. So you see, it's a sailing boat on top of which there's a construction site. Very imaginative, actually. Okay, let me let's avoid to get hit by a car in the first place. Sorry guys, if it's a little... Okay, let me see if I can stand here without disturbing and without... No, that's not a good idea. Okay. No. So, I should stand in the middle of the street to give you the best view, actually. Guys. Okay, let me see if I can show it to you from here. Okay. This is as best as I can get. So you see, it's a boat being attacked sort of by pirates, and on top of which there are construction sites. And we cannot really see it, but the boat is on a stormy ocean, actually. It's the city, it's the metropolis that is sort of suffocated by its own traffic, by its own problems, going worse and worse, actually, towards a storm, towards a tempest, actually. And since we are on the other side of the street, let me give you a closer look to the fall of giant of Carlos Atoche, actually, which you see once we're closer to it, its conditions are deteriorating, basically. This mural dates back to what, 2015 or so, actually. And yeah, this is the nature of street art, actually. It doesn't last too long, actually, and it's the nature itself. The artists know this and they accept this, actually. Street art is not made to last, although today there are lots of projects in which they try to keep it and to maintain it and to qualify it. There are lots of city projects, like for example Turmarancia, in which street art was created upon commission, under commission. And right now I'm going to show you in a moment the largest mural of Europe, which is by an artist called Jena Cruz, an artist from Senegal, if I'm not wrong. We're very, very close to it. Let me just give you a good view of it. Okay, let's cross the street one more time. Here we have another view of Blue's work that sort of continues. The name of the street is Via delle Conche. Concheria was a place where to treat the skins of the animals, also in ancient times. So leather wares and so on. And this goes back to the commercial nature that this place had. And here we have the mural by Jena Cruz, which is called Hunting Pollution. Actually, Hunting Pollution, because the painting used, which is called air light, it's actually hunting pollution. It transforms, it absorbs pollution and turns it into harmless souls, basically. Let's cross the street and let me show you the work from a better perspective. And basically what you see represented here is a tricolor heron, basically a bird that is distinguishing right now, and he's hunting in the sea. So you see a sort of opossum made out of oil, petrol actually, in which the animal is, in which the bird is kind of sticking, but also it's kind of a resurrection of the animal too, because of the kind of color that was being used. And you see it's reaching the entire surface of the building itself. And here again we see Blue's work. So as I was saying, this is the largest mural of Europe, actually. Let's continue our exploration of the neighborhood itself, actually, because there are a few more murals that I want to show you. As I was saying, there was a street art festival in 2010 in which most of those murals were realized, and the artists come from all over the world, and actually that's what their life is about. They travel around the world to realize these enormous murals on the surface of the cities. So you can see the work of Blue, for example, in South America, in the US, Los Angeles, in Berlin, in France, in England, actually, in Rome, in Bologna, actually. All we know about Blue is that he studied at the Academy of Fine Arts of Bologna, and they know each other normally, and they work alone. As we said, the two main painting techniques are the stencil and the poster, but also they also use spray cans, of course, but they try to use colors that have a low impact on the environment. The themes of street art are very often about environment or about social issues like abusive housing or social housing, immigrants. Street artists are very often politically engaged. Very often they run away from art galleries that try to organize exhibitions about them. Very few of them are accept to display their work, also because sometimes it's a work that cannot be displayed in an art gallery. Actually, what they do is they start very early. They start when they're teenagers very often, and sometimes they study art or sometimes they don't, quite simply, and they live like gypsies, basically. They live in constant movement. They live traveling, hiding their identity very often, and leaving a trace of them in the cities, in areas like Williamsburg in New York, for example, or Berlin, or the West End in London, and Italy and Rome has its own sort of tradition in that too. What is particular about Italian street art is that very often these artists talk to the art that is in the museums, the art that Italy is so famous for. There's another hilarious fresco by Kid Acne is the artist, is the name of the artist actually. This mural is called Fish and Kids, or The Swimmer, as you can see, and it's right above a historical pesqueria, a fish shop of the area actually. And as we said, environmental themes are quite important to street artists. What these artists wanted to represent is the harmony in which humankind and environment could live, but it just looks hilarious. The swimmer, this fat swimmer among all these little fishes. Now you see the influence of cartoons is incredibly interesting. But also it could be related to the shop itself. No, the fishes that happily swim in the ocean together with the swimmers, at last they will end up in the shop and being sold to the restaurants of the area actually. so we are continuing our exploration of the Ostiense district. Let me avoid to get hit by a car. As you can see, they're not very used to tour guides leading tours on their phone actually. There is another mural that I want to show you just around the corner from here actually. Let me just get the right perspective for it. We're almost there, and here we are. Just around the corner, you see, just right there, you see on one facade of this building there is the swimmer. On the other one there is this mural, actually in this case it's not stencil, by an artist called Axel Void, and the name of this mural is Nobody actually. You see this woman, this kind of romantic representation of this unknown woman, this Mrs. Nobody that you see here, was a woman that is one of the historical figures of the Ostiense district. She used to have a warehouse in this very same building, and this was somebody that everybody knew. actually in the area, in the district. So for us it's nobody, but not for the inhabitants of the neighborhood itself. So very often street artists, when they represent people on their murals, they represent people, as we said, that used to live in the buildings, or that used to be someone in the district themselves, that has somebody that is part of the history. And this is also of the history of the building itself. I want to show you another gasometer, another post-industrial archaeology piece. Actually, this is where we come from, guys. This is the direction we have been leading, actually. And so this is something that we have seen in Turmaranch as well. Now street art becomes part of the neighborhood itself, actually part of the building, also in terms of history. The aim is always to communicate with the place, with the people of the place in the first place, with the inhabitants. I have to put my mask on again, sorry about that. And there is one last place which I want to show you today before saying goodbye to you, actually. We're very close to it. And it's the sun came back, thank God. It's the very first, it's called Ponte dell'Industria, translated that would be something like the industrial bridge, which was a bridge built in at the end of the 1800s by the popes, actually, when this was still the state of the church, for the train. It was a bridge that hosted the train track, actually, that would connect Termini station, if you have been to Rome, you know Termini station, with Civitavecchia, actually, because we're going towards the sea, actually, towards the ocean. We're in the southern part of the city, in case I didn't mention that yet. And so this reveals the nature of the district itself. Actually, here we are. We're getting closer to it. It's a teeny tiny, sort of funny bridge of early 1900s. Let me see. I still don't have a good perspective, but we're very close to it. And from here we see the whole area one more time. So the neighborhood itself has a lot of characters. It's a place full of history. There's archaeology, there's an important church, there's museums, there's places where to eat for foodies, there's street art, and there are these funny buildings that must have looked so modern back then, but to us they look just as ancient as the statues in the museums somehow, no? So here we are. What's hilarious is that this bridge looks so tiny today, and you see the cars are driving on it as if nothing was. So this is was kind of the first iron bridge of the city itself, actually. And from here, we're walking on it right now, and from here we kind of have an interesting view of the city itself, of the Tiber. So we are on a piece of archaeology right now, guys. And one more time we see the gasometer. Actually, here we have a good idea on what it means, post-industrial archaeology. So you have to imagine, you have to imagine the Centrale Monte Martini in this kind of environment, actually. So guys, I'm back again. I hope you enjoyed. This little walk to the city. I tried to do my best to engage you, and I hope to see you in one of my next live walks. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday. Bye bye, guys.